Okay, we're going to pick back up on classroom assessments. Do I need to do something to get us rolling here on the screens? Wiggle, wiggle, wake up, wiggle, wiggle. It's tired of. Oh, hey, it helps to plug us in. Thank you, Nicole. What would I do without you? Mercy.
It's a whole.
Oh boy.
7 o'clock in the morning.
I know, I'm just now getting there. Okay. Ooh, now we can do it. All right. Whether you're looking at moving towards standards-based learning, I like to say dabbling in standards-based. One of my teachers like, would you please stop saying dabbling? It sounds like witchcraft or something. I'm like, oh, I can't think of a better word, so dabbling in it. Classroom assessment is important information for whether or not you're planning traditional classroom teaching or standards-based teaching. Classroom assessment is anything a teacher does to gather information about a student's knowledge or skill regarding a specific topic. You are assessing your students all day long. This is another area that I think small schools teachers, multi-grade teachers really shine. You know your students, you're watching them, you're interacting with them. Know that you are assessing them throughout the class period, throughout the time together. Even on the playground, you're watching and assessing your students. I like to refer to this as evidence of learning. We're not assessing in that traditional sense. We're gathering evidence, information, knowledge that our students are gaining knowledge and learning what we want them to know and be able to do. I'd like for you to shift your mindset away from how assessment was used when you were in school to assessment being a teaching tool and not just a grading tool. I know that when I first started teaching, probably not the first year, but not long after, when parents started questioning, or a parent would question, well, why did Johnny get a C on that? I started shifting my mindset to I need more assessments, not because I need evidence of student learning. I need evidence to validate that I'm doing my job. Yeah. So I got stuck in that trap of administrators in the room. When we say to teachers, you need to have 10 grades in the grade book for science, we push teachers to assessment as a tool to prove that they're doing their job instead of a tool for learning, for teaching. And it's not just for getting a grade. So try to just put the grade book out of your mind for a moment. Yes, we need to gather that evidence. Our job is to document that evidence. And some of that will come through observation. Some of that will come through interviews. Some of that will come through written assessments. Yeah. 3 different types of classroom assessments. You're used to obtrusive assessments that interrupt the flow of the day. We still will use obtrusive assessments. You will still, especially in 5 through 8, have a time where you're like, okay, everybody, we're going to take the science test. Everybody quiet. It interrupts. No other instruction is taking place when you're giving an obtrusive assessment. And that is totally acceptable in an SBL classroom. We're not asking you to throw those out. What we are probably asking you to throw out, and you guys aren't secondary teachers, so I don't have to battle this one with you, is that 20-page end-of-unit assessment that takes an hour for them to take. Let's not do that, okay? Your obtrusive assessment should not take up a tremendous amount of time or cover content from an entire unit. You may want to give them opportunities in an obtrusive assessment to prove learning that they need, maybe they didn't meet certain 2.0s, so you include those. But if all of your students have mastered the 2.0s, there's no point in putting them on assessing them again on that. Makes it hard when you're preparing the test because you want to prepare it with opportunities for students who haven't done it. But you don't have to do 5 different questions for one standard or one learning target. Unobtrusive assessments don't interrupt the flow of the classroom. Students might not even be aware that you are assessing them. These are things that, through observation, you may be just walking around with a clipboard. I remember the first time I tried to document, this was way back in the day, when we were doing reading, what's the reading thing called? Reading workshop. And you were supposed to document, what your kid's reading. And so I had my sticky notes and my clipboard, and I was going around documenting, but I had no idea what to do with that information. Yeah, I had lots of sticky notes, though, of my anecdotal notes of my students in their groups, but are reading. So you may not, I think that's the difference. You know what you're looking for now. You've got your scales, you're watching your students as they're interacting, you intentionally plan that activity that they're doing to meet the target, and you're watching to see. So now your documentation is much more on track than when I was doing reading workshop. Student observation charts are things that come in handy in a classroom, or you can just still use sticky notes and then document those later. Just having some form of tracking that you're documenting what you're looking for and which students have accomplished that, what you've observed, and then allows you to transfer that later into a grade book. Student-generated assessments are often a very underutilized form of assessment, but allowing students to tell you how are they going to prove their learning. I think this would be great for a 5 through 8 multi-grade classroom. As you teach a unit, especially maybe on a 4.0 topic, one at the higher level of the proficiency scale, giving students an opportunity to determine, here's how I'm going to show you that I know that. I had a teacher say to me once, that is not okay, Becky. Students cannot be telling us what's acceptable for them to get a 4.0. I decide that. And I said, well, of course you do. But they have to meet certain criteria. You don't just say, oh, go and do something, and then you tell me it's a 4.0. You say, here's, you can create it, but you need to prove to me how it meets that 4.0. There are some organizational documents available for planning or planning guides for students that you can utilize. You can see on this one, it says to achieve this level, I have to understand or be able to do the following. So the student has to put there in their own words what they're going to do, what level they're trying to demonstrate, and how they're going to demonstrate that. This also works really well once you get into reassessment opportunities. I don't know that we'll utilize reassessment opportunities as much in multi-grade because we're always on top of where our kids are and giving them multiple opportunities to learn. But if you are in a more maybe formal, structured classroom where you're moving on and it's child, let's say in a math class, 8th grade math, let's use that for example, 7th, 8th grade math, they didn't do very well on one of the units. And they want to have an opportunity to practice and reassess later to improve their grade. This is a great document to use for that because you put it back on them. You show me how are you going to show your learning for that. Are you going to do 10 more whatevers and then come and do something else, and have them write that up. Choice boards are another fun way for students to have a choice in how they would show their learning. I think in the elementary math, we created some choice boards that I think they're within some of the math units that we developed early on. Probably could improve on some of those, but this is just another fun way, especially at a 4.0 level, for students to choose how they're going to show or have some voice in that, their learning. I want to take a few minutes and share a little bit about my own journey. And maybe some of you can resonate. Some of you are a lot younger than I am, so you may not have been stuck in some of the traditional teaching ways that I had started with. I really started out as a pretty standard, like I said, textbook teacher. But it also didn't, I came with an early childhood background as well, and so it felt just really stagnant and boring to me. And then the generation of unit planning came in, developing these big, wonderful units. So I stayed pretty, and then, the whole language approach to reading came in, and I wandered off in that direction as well. But when I hit the unit planning generation, which I still love, even with some information on backwards design, my unit planning didn't have a lot of purpose and focus to it other than activity-based. So I planned really, really fun things for kids to do. My students loved me. Sorry, that sounds prideful, but I think my students loved my classroom. It was fun, it was interactive. The joke amongst parents was don't buy new school clothes when they go to Becky's classroom. Just don't put them in new clothes. Just wear old stuff because she's going to make a mess. And I didn't mind that. So one of the units that I did, I think it was with the 5th, 6th grade, it was probably 3, 4, 5, 6 class that I taught. That year we did this hot air balloon. This is not my students, but it's kind of a picture I found online of exactly what we did. Have you guys done this where you make these hot air balloons with tissue paper? Oh my word, they are so much fun, except I think it's probably, they don't actually have a flame that goes under them when you launch them, but still I wonder if they're safe to launch. So the kids spend time building these out of tissue paper and gluing them together. And then you have a launch day where you use like a camp stove with a stovepipe that goes over it. And the stovepipe, the heat rises and then they get to, so they're not very close to the flame. And ours actually had a big, like a 3-foot rim like this so they could stand back as they held their thing. And you can tether them. And so the heat, as it rises, it fills that balloon and it'll rise and they can just let it go. And we lived in the mountains in Montana, so I'm sure they all ended up in the forest, which I'm sure people loved. But if you ask my kids after that unit, which took us, I'm embarrassed to say, probably 4 weeks, what they learned was tissue paper tears easily, glue sticks run out quickly and dry up if you leave the lid off. They also learned school is fun, so I didn't mind that. But I had no content tied to that. I didn't have learning objectives other than the one that probably was written on the board that I based it on. I had one standard that I plucked out of somewhere and I slapped out on the board that was probably something about heat rising or something. They couldn't tell you that. We also did, I'm embarrassed to say, a medieval unit that year that was loads of fun. But I doubt they could tell you any learning objectives from that. I moved probably from that unit planning. I kept unit planning. I think I started trying to add more standards to it, but not with the intentionality, the focus, and the clarity that I would today with having a proficiency scale in my hands. The other thing with the proficiency scale in my hands is now my students know what they need to know. If you're using proficiency scales every day, you should be talking about that scale in some way or some form in your classroom. It should be posted, it should be visible to students, and there's the reminder. Hey guys, today as we're working on our hot air balloons, we're going to read this book about such and such. Remember that we're doing hot air balloons because of this, connecting it back to that learning target. I was just too much of an activities-based teacher. I want to jump out of this and jump over to a different one, talking about students and using scales with students, because I think this is where the power happens. I had a multi-grade teacher in my union that she's probably a little bit younger than I am, but not much. She probably has about 10 more years of teaching. And when we started rolling out standards-based learning 4 years ago in our union, she said to me, I'm going to retire before this happens. This is going to take forever, and I'm not doing it. I am not doing it. And I said, that's okay. You don't have to do it. Just, we're just all on a learning journey together. It's not a requirement. It's just a learning journey that we're all on. So I took her, I invited her because she is an excellent teacher. I invited her to take part of a customization of scales process. And she did the customization. Her content knowledge is good. She got a little bit of energy from some of the other teachers working with us, and we built some units. And she said, well, I'll try one. I'm probably not going to do this. I'm going to retire before we do this, right? When she saw the difference in her students, and it wasn't just from the unit that she built, it was from sharing that proficiency scale with her kids. It totally, she is all in. She's teaching standards-based learning in every subject area this year. She's been one of my strongest proponents. She actually organizes teachers in her conference to get together off contract and build unit plans together. They do it for fun. Imagine that. She started her kind of tiptoeing into it in an interesting way through using goal setting with her students from map testing. So she's doing SBL unit plan math over here, and she's doing goal setting with students over here with map, and she realizes, wait a minute, I can do goal setting with these targets over here in the SBL and connect those to what they're doing over here in math and on map. And when she saw the progress that her students made and the shift that I hear teachers say is, the shift occurred from the question of, what do I have to do? How can I get an A? I don't want to do that, just give me the C. To, can you help me know this? What do I need to know? And I don't know this one, can you help me mark this one off? I had another teacher that had that experience. She started with a 7th grade. She's a pretty traditional teacher. She said, I'm going to try a 7th grade unit with just my 7th graders, math, on circles. And she built the unit. She gave the students a proficiency scale. And she said, okay, we're doing something new. We're just trying this standards-based thing. She wanted to dabble into the grading as well. So she said, I'm going to grade you with a standards-based grade. I'm also going to grade you with a traditional grade. And at the end of the unit, whichever grade is higher, because she was transitioning, not to get in grading yet, but she was transitioning her traditional grade. She would convert that, or her standards-based grade, she would convert to traditional at the end. So she said, I'll give you whichever one's higher. And so that the students knew, and she knew then also that she wouldn't have a challenge with parents or students on the grade issue. And she gave them their proficiency scale. They were talking about circles and introduced the vocabulary the first day. Mini lesson. Next day, one of the students said, oh yeah, Mrs. So-and-so, so the definition of a radius is this, right? And then a circle is this. And they just kind of blurted it out. She said, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to mark you off that you know that. And I'm like, what do you mean you're going to mark us off that we know that? Well, that's on our proficiency scale. So since you know it, I'm going to mark that you've done that and you've already achieved that. So you've reached, you've mastered that 2.0. And the other kids were, wait, I know that too. I can tell you that too. And so the motivation, instead of getting a star or sticker or whatever, the motivation of kids of being able to track their learning like that is tremendous. It helps them stay focused. It helps them to know what they need to know and be able to do. And it shifts from, and it's a subtle shift, but the shift is from completing task without a purpose or goal to completing a goal and using those tasks to achieve that goal. Does that make sense? So here's some ways that I've just gathered here's some using scales with students. We can use them for goal setting, self-evaluation. Students can use them to evaluate themselves, to track their own growth. We can use them to give specific feedback to students, letting them know where they are on their learning journey. It builds self-efficacy. It helps students know that something is challenging but attainable. They see the end line. They know that they may be at a 1.0 or a 1.5 or just only know one of the 2.0s, but they know it's attainable, and they know that the teacher knows how to get them there. And the shift, it shifts the focus away from the grade toward their own learning. I had another teacher that I worked with this summer. He's the one that built the 1.0s. So he said to me, I started the school year with the traditional math book. And 3-4 weeks in, we're still in chapter 1. The kids aren't going anywhere. And he said, I felt like I'm a failure, this isn't working. So he said, so I thought I'd try that SBL thing that you've been telling us about, and brought out the proficiency scales. But in looking at the proficiency scale for the unit that he's been trying to teach, he realized that they don't have the core knowledge, the foundation. So he built out, okay, here's what we need prerequisite to get there. Then he had the students design these little badges that they would earn, and every time they accomplished a 1.0 of his, now I'm not saying you need to go build 1.0s, when they accomplished their prerequisites, they got this little badge. And then every 2.0 that they accomplished, they got a little badge. Those kids are so excited. They've developed I think his theme this year is like boats, and so they designed this little thing that's like an anchor, and they print them off on one of those 3D printer things, and yeah, anyway. So he said the shift, though, from shifting to articulating to students what they need to know instead of just going through the textbook, he said they got it. They finally got it. What I'd been working 3 or 4 weeks to try to get them to do, and just dragging their feet on, we were going over it and over it. Once they had that goal with the proficiency scale, they could see the end line. And I'll have teachers, especially secondary teachers, say to me, my kids know what they need to know and be able to do. I have a syllabus. What's the problem with that? What's the difference between a syllabus and a proficiency scale?
The syllabus is just a guideline of what you expect to be teaching.
The task that you have to do, right? Yeah. Here's a list of the tasks that you're going to do and some of the things we're going to cover. Where a proficiency scale says this is what you need to know and be able to do. Some teachers start out like this. I don't love it, and I'll tell you why I don't love it. But it's a good way to dip your toe in. Start using the language. A 1, I'm trying, I just don't get it yet. A 2, I almost got it, I could do a little more. 3, I get it, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. A 4, I could teach it and apply it in new creative ways. The reason I tell teachers, use this to start introducing the language in your classroom, but don't stay stuck there. Because a 2 has content knowledge to it. It's not that I've almost got it and I could use a little more practice. It's that I know the foundational skills that I need to know in order to get there. But this is okay too. I had you guys rate where you were today based on a kind of a 1 through 4. I kind of got it, I don't got it. So it's a good way to incorporate that language. Here's another one, novice, apprentice, master, expert, just using a general 1, 2, 3, 4. This is one of my teachers developed this when they wanted to start dabbling in standards-based. They didn't want to use it with academics, so they used it with behavior. And they developed their own. We don't have proficiency scales at this time for work habits or behavior. So she developed her own and then used kind of a general scale to introduce and get her kids kind of just learning what the 1, 2, 3, 4 meant. And then she had them self-rate. And then sometimes she would go around and say, try again. I think you are closer to a 3 today. This was one of my teachers that started using a scale. And remember when I said that students could use it to self-evaluate? So they used a 1 through 4 scale. They had their proficiency scale. When they turned their work in for the day, they had to stop and think, do I think I scored a 2.0 on this, or is this a 3.0? Now, the thing about that is if you're only giving them a 2.0 assignment, that's got to go in the 2.0 drawer. So that's where a generic scale sometimes doesn't work for me, because you can be doing a 2.0 task, and you can do it exceedingly well. So does that mean you're a 4? No, you're still a 2 because you did a 2.0 task. So that's where I'm like, no, don't stay there too long, it gets messy. This is another example of a teacher just using them on a daily basis in her classroom. They have their proficiency scales in their binders, but then she pulls which target they're working on for that day, whether it's a 2.0 or a 3.0, and just lists them. So every day she can refer to that. Remember, what we're working on is recognizing the characteristics of an expository nonfiction text. Oh, and this is a tracker. And I think the students self-evaluate on this. Oh, sorry, yes. And I can add these on the PowerPoint for these on the Padlet too. This was a different PowerPoint. Since we started talking about student tracking, I thought that's important. Since it's kind of where we say we see the most powerful change, then let's see what some of it looks like. This one, she is having her students track. Kalisha and Shanina, you may use something similar. I don't know, when you said that you want your students to have 80% of the standards for a certain subject, is that, or for a certain unit? Do you track for unit or for content area? Per unit, okay, per unit. This one's more, no, this is the unit also. So they're tracking when they get it, what date they got it, if they almost got it as they do assignments. This is a lower grades classroom. You'll notice that they only have the 3.0 listed and not the 2.0. They're still working on the 2.0s. The little circle numbers are student numbers so that they aren't posting like a student name. This is a larger classroom. But when the student accomplishes that goal, they get to go put their number up. No, this one they're putting their number by the one they're working on. So student number 1 is working on, I can fluently add or subtract within 10. So that's, their personal goal that they've set for themselves, with the teacher, of course. This is a kindergarten. In this school, they only do standards-based for ELA and math, but you can see the learning targets are listed here for the kindergartners. I know my number is 0 to 20. When they've accomplished that, they put their sticker, and their sticker has their number on it. And so it's just a student tracking form. This school actually required that their teachers have some public form of, like a visual of their student learning. So I thought this was unique for this 5th grade teacher, and the 5th graders loved telling me about it. So she just writes what the measurement topic is. We're working on author's opinion, we're working on author's word choice, point of view for this unit. And then every time they accomplish that, they just go and write their name. So I ask them, so how long does that stay up? Oh, just while we're doing the unit. And then that one comes down and she puts up a new one and we get to work on new skills. I was like, okay, great. Yep. Easy though. Is that not just easy? It's kind of messy looking, but it's easy. It doesn't have to be some cutesy fun. I love that it's just a piece of butcher paper with the measurement topics listed on it. And the kids loved putting their name on it. This is a little kindergarten classroom also, and the teacher has the goals listed, and their little mountain climber is where they're trying to, what they're currently working on, and then the stamp, they get to stamp it when they finish. So you can see nobody's finished mountain comprehension yet. They're all climbing it, and then when they finish, they'll get to put their little stamp there. So it's just a cute way that she's, can keep it in front of the students. They're constantly talking about their learning, and they're able to track their learning. This is just a teacher, student-friendly version that a teacher created. This is one of our teachers that redid the student-friendly version, because if you look at the NAD ones, they're fine, but they're visually not very student-friendly for lower grades. They're kind of hard to read. They're on that blueprint. So she just redid them with this little mountain climbing thing, helping her students, have a visual. Then when they accomplish it, they simply just get to highlight it. And she just helps them highlight, and these are 2nd graders. This is actually a high school classroom, but I show this example. She's recreated, I love how she did her vocabulary on the left, and then her 2.0s here on the right. And she's got the little check boxes. All the kids have them in their binders. They can check them off. I was in her classroom when she was introducing this, and it was fun when she went through the vocab. She said, okay, which ones do we know now? Which ones are there that you're not familiar with? And she used that just as a pre-teaching tool with her kids. So they said, we haven't done this one. Okay, we're going to do that one tomorrow or whatever. When I saw this, though, I questioned her and said, whoa, that's a lot of content on there. So she's using what we would call the non-customized version of the scale, the full version. Those aren't available to you on the toolbox right now, so you won't have this mistake. Some of our pilot teachers early on had the full version. And she said, I just want to make sure I teach it all. And that's fine. But for grading purposes, you really only want to be grading about 3 to 5 2.0s for each 3.0. You don't want to hold kids accountable to have to be graded and reporting out on all those vocabulary words. You may still teach them all, but you don't want to grade, and when you start reporting out, you don't want to grade and report out on all of them. That's probably more information than you need right now. I think Nicole's giving me that look about, Becky, where are you going? No, just kidding. Where are you going with that, girl? So typically for every 3.0, there should be about 3 to 5 2.0s. So right here, here's the 3.0, QEF1, solve quadratic equations in one variable with any leading coefficient. These are the 2.0s that coordinate with that 3.0. But look how many she's got there. Typically, you would only choose 3 to 5.
So you select it.
Well, the NED has already customized, but on some of the ones I will show you, they still have too many. I had a teacher that texted me yesterday and said, what do I do with these 32 vocabulary words that are still on this scale? And I was like, 32 vocabularies on one of the NED customized scales? She's like, yeah. And I was like, customize them. You pick. Because 2.0 is customizable by teacher. 3.0 stays. That's our guaranteed and viable curriculum. That's what we say, don't touch it. That's the standard. But the 2s and the 4s, you can customize. Now, that doesn't mean go and change them to something really simple and easy. You want to keep the academic rigor there. But yes, this would be a lot. Doesn't matter so much when you're not reporting out for standards-based grading. But as a teacher, this would be overwhelming for you to track all of this. Overwhelming. So that's why it's important to customize that down to 3 to 5. And we're not going to watch a video of her doing her thing. Okay, I think that's all on. Oh, this is just another student-friendly version where the student, and I like this one actually for like a 5 through 8 classroom. You have your scale up at the top, and then down at the bottom, I probably wouldn't put assessment type, I would put evidence of learning. And then the student could write what page number in the book it is, or what assessment it is, maybe it's an exit ticket, what date they did it, and what their score was. And so they're tracking their own progress there to see if they're moving from a 2 to a level 3. Questions on student tracking or anything else we've covered?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I think someone mentioned it yesterday, how they share the standards with parents.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that at the beginning of the unit just via email of like, here's our goals for the unit?
I think it depends on where you are in your standards-based journey. For my schools that have gone fully standards-based, they share those at the beginning of the year and like, here's the 3rd grade standards, here's the 4th grade, here's what we're doing, and then they go home with each unit. Hey, we're working on this unit, here's what your kids are needing to be. So it's physically going home. If you're dabbling in standards-based learning, like this next year, you're going to do 1 unit. I would do whatever you currently do. How do you send home, like let's say you do a math unit, how do you inform parents right now of what you're working on? And I would just continue doing the same thing. Do not go back to your classrooms and say to parents, we're doing standards-based learning now, and I'm going to be teaching a standards-based unit on fractions, so it's going to be different. It's not. Don't panic, everybody. Just teach your standards-based unit, same way, grade out the same way you would. You may tell your kids, I'm going to use some different words, like you're at a 2, you're at a 3, but you're still going to get your percentile score. You're still scoring out traditionally. So if you give a 10-point quiz and it's a 2.0 quiz, you can check off those 2.0s on that tracking chart, kids. But if you miss 2 of them, you're still at an 80%. That's messy. And what you will feel like as you start moving into standards-based learning teaching, you're going to feel the urge to start grading that way too, because it's just a natural fit. One of my schools that went standards-based teaching and grading the first year, I was like, don't do it. They say to do about 2 to 3 years of just planning and teaching with standards before you go to grading with doing standards-based grading. But what they told me is, we decided as a team it does not honor the work that teachers or students are doing to give traditional grades anymore. But the difference was they got all on the same page. All their teachers were together. They had a plan for grading and assessment so that it wasn't messy. So it's going to feel awkward talking about 2s and 3s and 4s, but still giving A, Bs, and Cs. Kalisha and Shanina, how do you guys handle that? Still, you're tracking on a 2, 3, and 4 scale, but you're still giving traditional grades? Yes and no. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the classroom experience, I'll share with my students, like, hey, it looks like you're at a 2. Do you agree? Or and we'll just have that discussion. In the grading, there's a scale that I added to the Padlet that's a conversion chart.
Okay.
That's kind of helpful just for me when I'm looking at a 2 or a 2.5 or a 2.75. I'm like, what does that convert to for grades? But then I was talking to another teacher in here, and I struggle to grade in the grade book that progress of learning. So I'm grading in the grade book not the progress. Because if I average that together, I mean, they might have started at a 0.
Right. And you don't want to average a 0 and a 4.
Exactly.
No.
So, so it's a little messy.
It is, yeah. The middle is very messy, and I would say that's not the purpose or our goal here today is to get us to grading. And you don't have to do grading in order to teach a standards-based unit. Plan your unit, teach it, talk about where your kids are, but it's okay. Give yourself permission, take a deep breath, and just give a traditional grade and don't panic about it. When I first started this journey, I wouldn't have said that, but that's where I am today.
But the NIT is preparing a platform for us. We can just check it.
We're trying.
Yes. In the meantime, I just do my traditional thing with my students and their parents, but for me, I just check what they're doing. And if I have to go to RenWeb and OA Connect, I just assign a few points for practice, so they know that we are doing things. Parents need to know.
I will say this. I'll speak for Nicole. She can correct me if I'm wrong. Or it's more your superintendent's probably. If you build you get so on fire about standards-based learning that you go all in and you've got all your units built and all your assessments built and you're just in every subject and you are aching to give standards-based grades, talk to your conference and your union, and they'll help you do kind of a hybrid model, which is kind of what Shanina's doing and Kalisha's doing too. And most of our schools are still doing hybrid models. They're not, because they're still on platforms like RenWeb and Jupyter that don't support standards-based learning in the way that we need them to. So the grading's messy. But don't be stuck and say, because I've also had teachers say, we can never do standards-based until you give us the grading platform. That's not true, because it's about shifting the way that we think about teaching and learning. And as you can see, most of it's about planning, intentional planning to have clarity in what we want students to know and be able to do. And let's give ourselves grace to practice that as teachers without the peering eyes of parents saying, what's this new standards-based thing? You don't even have to mention it. Students won't even know. You're just saying, we're doing something new. I've got this chart. I want to track where we are on it. These are the things you need to know and be able to do. And so the 2s are the kind of the easier, simple, foundational skills you need. The 3s are what we all want to know by the end of this unit. The 4s are going, using that knowledge above and beyond. But just keep giving your traditional grade for your task that you give. It's going to start to feel kind of icky, but it's okay. It's the messy middle of it. Any other questions? Okay, just summarizing unit planning. I cannot say this one enough. Know your proficiency scale. Know your proficiency scale. I will often think that I know my proficiency scale, and then I'll get planning a unit, and then I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, where did I go? I just went down the wrong trail. That's not what that was asking me to do. Because sometimes I find that I'm the activity teacher. I find that fun activity. And I'm like, and then I have to say, does that align with one of the targets? If it doesn't, kick it out. So know your proficiency scale. Plan your assessments first. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to build out the whole entire thing. It's helpful in some subject areas if you build out the whole entire thing, like math. Pull those questions. What do you want them to be able to do? Know what those look like. And consider the instructional practices and assignments and activities after you plan your assessment piece. Okay, I want to know kind of where you are now. So I'm going to give you a proficiency scale. Get your sticky notes out again. This is different. They only gave you one. Oh, let me get some for you. Okay. This will give you a little bit of grading practice. So if we're doing traditional, if we're doing, not traditional, if we're doing standards-based, thinking about these, recognizing the vocabulary, proficiency scale, 3.0 element, 2.0 element, 4.0 element, evidence of learning, assessment, and checks for understanding. And do you know these? Oh, we didn't do this yet. Can you access the NAD proficiency scales? Collaborate with others to understand the content on the scale, develop assessments for the content on the scales, design instruction relevant to the different levels of the scale, and develop activities and lessons to support. If you can do all of those, what level would you be? 2.0. If you can develop a unit to use in your classroom, that's incorporating all these, right? Then you would be a 3. If you could do that in a format that you could share with others, that would be a 4. What if I can only do one of these? Where would I be? 1. It's technically a 1.5. I don't know why I made it that way, just because I only wanted to put 4 things on instead of the half steps. But yeah, if you can do some of those, you'd be a 1.5. So I won't make you write it on the sticky note. Save your sticky note for later, okay? All right. Does everybody feel like a 1.5 pretty much?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the NAD toolbox. We'll look at that in just a minute because I want to jump out of this PowerPoint. We're going to go to that. But I think this is important to remember. This is what people think success looks like. We always think success is linear. We're really bad about that as teachers. Well, I am. Okay, we got a new curriculum. It's called Big Ideas Math. Come and get your training. Here's your book. Go do it. Okay, I do it. So we're used to implementing programs. This is not a program. It's not just a math book or just a language arts book. It's a second order change. It's a change in the way you think and approach teaching and learning. So this is actually what it really looks like. It's messy. Every single one of you will start this journey in a different place. And that's okay. And it's going to look different in every classroom. But guess what? The outcomes eventually will be the same. All your students will know the same content and the same information. So some teachers may start this journey just with goal setting with kids, like one of my teachers did. She just started talking, and with the general 1 to 4, let me just start talking about a general 1 to 4 and having my kids set goals. Where do you think you are? Just get used to the language. Some teachers may plan 1 unit in 1 subject. I personally wouldn't recommend doing any more than that your first year. Plan 1 unit, 1 subject. Some teachers may play around with a pacing guide. You may today be developing your own pacing guide for multi-grade, and you may see like fractions and go, okay, I think there's a fractions proficiency scale. I can incorporate that 1 in an SBL mindset right there. Do 1 in 1 grade level. I was thinking of other ways teachers get started with this work, and it left my mind. Well, I'll come back to that. I'll just blurt them out as they come to me. Okay, let's jump over to the toolbox. Do you all have internet access?
Yep.
And can everybody get on the toolbox? Okay. Wow, okay. So the easiest way to get there is to go to unless you don't do dashboard a lot. Do you guys use your dashboard a lot? Is go to the NAD dashboard and log in here, and then just click on the toolbox icon. I'll show you that. Mine will have a bunch more junk than yours. When you scroll down, there's this little brain here that says SBL Toolbox.
It's not showing on your screen. It's not showing on the TV.
Well, look at that. Hold on there. Thank you. I was like, y'all are looking at me kind of like something's not working, but I'm not sure what it is.
So, I want NAD and other resources. I went to that resource list that they found, that they made for us.
So this everything isn't
I
actually
think it's like the
valid.
3rd one down on that one.
The what?
The one that's legal
The app thing?
Yeah, there's an app you can have that says.
Oh.
I don't think that's.
Here's the challenge, there's an old NAD toolbox. This one is the SBL toolbox. There's an old thing called NAD toolbox.
So teacher tool.
Dashboard.nadeducation.org. Everybody got it? And now that you can see, then if you click on SBL toolbox. Oh, for your dashboard?
Is it the same as for evidence learning for the
It
password?
should be the same as your ALC
Okay.
login.
Okay.
I have a question,
Yes.
and this might be for Nicole or Dr. Horton. So the Lake Union requires that the teachers be trained in SBL.
That's right.
before we give them
Mhm.
access, so some of them won't have access because.
Right.
My question is, does this count as their training?
That would depend on what Lake Union's requirements are.
Okay.
Yeah. For our union, we have a specific list that they have to take the ALC, SBL, implementing SBL, and then the New Art and Science of Teaching for our union, and then one other for our union. Ms. Nicole, where are your requirements for Lake Union teachers to access the scales? How can they get a hold of those if they haven't met the requirements?
So that is, in our union, it's decided by conference.
Oh,
And so they have conference requirements. They actually have to talk to their superintendent.
okay.
To manage that.
So that's on you. You're like, good, okay. You know, here's my philosophy on training is you need just enough to know what you don't know, and then you need to get a hold of the scales so you can start thinking about what you don't know, and then you need some more training, because it's not like you can just get the scales and know it, but you also can't really practice anything to figure out what you don't know until you get the scales. So require enough to give you a foundation, get your hands on the scales, but don't feel like, because I've also gotten feedback that like, we did that training and you gave us the scales and we have no clue what we're doing. I know, because it's hard work. Yes?
Would it be better for our superintendent to, like, say we want to dabble in it with science?
Mm-hmm.
Could they give us just those standards while we're trying it out?
In my union, that's a yes.
Okay.
It sounds like in your union, that would be up to your conference superintendent. Yeah. So I would ask your superintendent, even if you stand over their shoulder and say, I want to do electricity 3rd grade, print me that one. They might be willing to do that. Yeah. You know, I understand I understand why we have them. We have them locked down because it's a copyright requirement from Marzano, because we purchased a product that's copyrighted and not available for free. You know, it's a purchasable product. So that's why they have to be password protected, but also we want to equip teachers. We don't want just to like say, oh, go and do this, here they are, and not have our administrators provide the training that's needed and the support that's needed to get there. So I'm just going to show you a couple things on the toolbox. We'll jump into 3rd grade, and let's go into social studies since we're going there soon. Well, okay, social studies will work. So you'll notice that on the left-hand side, these titles are the measurement topics, and then the proficiency scale you can access here. If you hover over the I can, and once you click on it, it'll load it. It'll just pop up, and you can download it. Once you click over on the I can, this is the student-friendly version. Again, you can take that content and make it more student-friendly if you want, if you don't like that format. And then over in this far right-hand column, where it says reference documents, you'll find a few tools there that will be helpful. Our friends in Pacific Union did this correlation document for us, which I love, love, love. And your question about notifying parents, once you are going all in, not now, right? Don't tell parents you're doing standards-based learning right now. But once you're all in, this has all of the 3.0 standards that are listed and how they correlate to the NAD standards. This is a great document for grade level because it says to parents, hey, these are all the things our 3rd graders are going to need to know in the year. Here's their math. Here's what we're learning in ELA. Here's what we're learning in science. And here's what we're learning in social studies. So it's a good kind of curriculum document to share with parents once you're all in for standards-based. It's also helpful for you because you can use this document to go back and see some of the correlation between NAD and NGSS or Common Core. I didn't say that, but it's there. There is a printable proficiency scales here, and I can, so if you want to print the whole grade level instead of just having to open up each one, you can click there and that will load like a whole printable of all of them for that subject and that grade, which is nice. You know how in Encounter you have to go into each one and click everything and open and run it? We ask for them to have just one clickable spot for that. The NAD unit plan template is here. You have a modified version of that. So this one may look a little bit different because we've discovered, oh no, they did update it. Okay. We discovered we liked this format where it's more horizontal here instead of just those little squares so that we can add more content in it. Especially as we're sharing with each other, it's nice to have more information. Okay, I want to click over into another grade level that has a pacing guide. So science 3rd grade, in this far right-hand column, you'll see grade 3 science pacing guide. And that will have the measurement topic, what quarter to teach it, life science, the grade levels that it coordinates with by design, and we'll show how that science team laid that out for the year. Remember, it's a guide, you can change it. There are some here that do not have proficiency scales connected to them yet. So here you'll see health science, and then you'll see like healthy heart listed in italics, and it's not as bold. That's because it was taught in by design for 3rd grade year, but we didn't have a proficiency scale for it for 3rd grade. So a committee will need to work on either developing it or making a decision that we're just not going to teach it anymore. We have to be careful that we don't add so many more things to it that now the year becomes more content than what we had before. So we're trying to be careful with that. I think that's pretty much everything that you can find on here. Oh, let me find one that has a sample unit. I always have to click through them because I don't remember which ones we built. Okay, right here. So if it has a sample unit that was built by a team, it will have sample unit right here. And that means that it has a unit that was created by an NAD summer committee. And you can just click and load that and use it yourself. That's another good way to start, is don't build your own unit. Just grab one of these that's on there and teach it, especially math. Math is easy in one extent because it's single grades, so you're just teaching 3rd grade estimation. So incorporate that within your math lessons and just practice with it. The challenge with math is that you're teaching all the grades. So the benefit of doing a science lesson is you can pull like an electricity unit for 3rd grade and teach it to 1 to 4. So that makes it nice where you're teaching everybody together. But these are already pre-built, so you could incorporate using those and help you learn about building lesson plans and not even have to build one yourself. And let me go back over here for just a minute. Eventually, and maybe most of you know this, eventually this area will be populated with teacher-shared resources, but I'm not sure when that's going to be coming. So just keep watching. Your union will let your conferences know when that starts getting populated. For now, it only has the NAD documents and NAD samples. You can share photos to the gallery, which our friend Shanina has. Thank you, Shanina. So you can see a glimpse of things in her classroom related to SBL. And the more teachers that share, the more content we have to help learn from each other. So we're hoping that this database can be a place that we can collaborate and share resources to make the job easier for us. Okay, let's stand up for just a moment. And we're going to take a little brain break. I'm going to put in a brain break because I'm going to make you do something hard next. Oh, how are we doing on time, Miss Shanina? We got till 12. Okay. All right. You guys probably have seen this research. Amazingly, the part of the brain that processes movement is the same part of the brain that processes learning. Sorry, that's a freebie not related to SBL. That's why it's so important that we incorporate movement into. So remember, incorporating positive thinking into and incorporating movement. So let me skip that one. Oh, this is the brain after sitting quietly and the brain after movement. A 20-minute walk. So you got to have some movement. Okay, find a partner. Oh, have you guys read this quote by John Ratty? The real reason we feel so good when we get our blood pumping is that it makes the brain function at its best. This benefit of physical activity is far more important than what it does for the body. So what it does for the brain is far more important than what it does for the body. Okay, I want to jump over to the Padlet. Any questions on the toolbox? Let's finish up with that. Any questions on the toolbox? Yes.
Looking at that pacing guide for science.
Okay, hold on just a minute, Jody. I want to make sure everybody hears your question. Okay, Jody has a question that may be relevant to everyone.
Okay, so on the pacing guide for science, it tells how many days, but I don't know how those correlate to weeks. Because people, I know one conference, they're supposed to teach science every single day. I do it 2 days a week. So,
yeah. I'm going to wait for Kalisha to come back. Oh, she's there. Kalisha, you were on science, right?
Yes.
I was looking over there. She's gone. There she is. Your 6 to 7 days, my understanding was those are class periods and a typical class period. So a 45-minute class period. So if you're doubling up, you would need to do 2 of those if you're doing hour-and-a-half classes. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jody? It's assuming that it's teaching science all year.
All year.
All year. So like a 30-minute science, a 30-minute social studies together.
Or every other day.
Oh, every other day. So a 6 to... Oh, yep. So
We had said basically scheduling it for science 2 times a week and social studies 2 times. So we were planning it based on.
So if it's a 6 to 7 day lesson, is that 3 weeks then? 2, 4, 6?
Right, yeah, because it would be based on an hour then. Like an hour lesson twice a week. Or,
Okay.
Or 4 half-hour lessons every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Could you repeat that from the front, just because I feel like that's so important as people start to actually write down.
Yep. Okay, Nicole wanted me to repeat this, and Jody had a question, and Kalisha, you correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go back to the science pacing guide. On the science pacing guide, the days, Jody's question was, does that coordinate with what time periods? So here's my understanding is when they said 13 to 15 days, it's 13, oh, Kalisha, I'm not going to get it right, 13 half-hour class periods. 13 to 15 half-hour class periods. So you could do those in 2 days a week. Well, if you did 2 days a week and did an hour, you would do 4 of those. Is that right? So it's based on 13 to 15 half-hour lessons. Yeah. So if you're teaching 45-minute lessons, you may have less than 13 to 15. So that's why really I have found that the pacing guides for social studies and science aren't as helpful for multigrade because of that. And I've found that my teachers have done best to build it and pace it out themselves. Yeah. And that's no criticism to the work that your team did. It's just hard work with multigrade. Yeah. Because really it's designed for a second grade classroom that's teaching science 4 times a week, 30 minutes a day.
Yeah, it's designed for grade level, not for
Yeah. So you have to adjust just like you do everything else. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
So are they all based off that half hour, like all the pacing, or is different subjects different pacing?
I would guess math was based that way, probably on more of a 45-minute time period, the pacing guide. Because I think most conferences, we don't have, Nicole, in your union, do you have required minutes for elementary subjects or just recommended minutes?
So we just refer to the NAB daily
Oh, okay.
And actually that is in the Padlet. It is.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look at that. So since lots of unions came together to do the work, it's probably kind of a sort of average.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say 30 minutes to an hour, but I think you're going to have to look at it as a guide. Again, that's why it's a guide, because multiple things. Your time may be different, how much time you allot for a class period, and your students may be different. Well, your students are going to be different. So, yeah. So look at it and design it for what fits your needs, but probably anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour time period. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I have a question for you. I went here and I want to use this instructional material.
Okay, the instructional materials down here, the question is about these instructional materials down here. These are in the future going to be teacher shared resources, but the NAD has not started loading those on there. So you will, there's nothing here right now. No. The only thing you'll find is right here, there'll be a sample unit on some of them. Yeah, a sample unit on some. Yeah, sorry about that. I am so excited that we even have that possibility coming, because if you can imagine, if let's say I create a PowerPoint to teach a certain concept, I can just share it and then you can take it. Yep, that's the vision, but the vision has not yet become a reality. So that's our vision. We need it. What we're doing in our union, and it's not coming along as quickly as I'd like, we have set up a Padlet that we're sharing units on. So teachers can send them to me, I put them on the Padlet, they can go on the Padlet and take each other's units. So, all right, next, let's look at the Padlet, unless there's any other questions. And you can get to the Padlet by going to the Padlet that Nicole sent you and then clicking on my name or whatever it had there. Okay, the PowerPoint presentation is there, and then I will add that other PowerPoint presentation that had the teacher sharing, the student, sharing with students. This column has just kind of that quick overview of how to prepare a unit. So that step-by-step that I had on the PowerPoint will be there kind of in a paper form. These are going to be slow to load, so I'm not going to bother loading them all. Templates.
Are we able to alter them?
Yes, they are Word documents, so you should be able to alter it. Just download it. When you open that, let me show you on this one because this is one I want us to think about right now. Once you open it, if you click over here on the 3 little dots, you can download attachment. And then you can have it and change it. Let me finish walking you through just what's on the Padlet, and then I'll come back to this one. So some of these are just unit planning resources. There's 2 different templates there. These are the taxonomies that I talked about. We use all kinds of taxonomies to wrap our head around what is the scale or the target actually asking us to do. Sometimes we just have to stop and let's look at a taxonomy. This document right here, Critical Concept Alignment to Source Standards, this has helped us a lot with math, science, and language arts. It does not have a correlation to social studies. So the documents that we have, our proficiency scales, were based, the way those came about is Marzano got teams of professional people together, and they took all of the state and Common Core standards that were available for ELA, and they went through those and they built proficiency scales. So some of those standards became 2.0s, some of those became 3.0s. And so they're all kind of just piled together in a proficiency scale in a different way. Science came from NGSS standards, so you'll see a lot of commonality between the proficiency scales and NGSS. That's where we've had a lot of success, is looking at the science correlation. So let me go down to 143 here. I'll show you how to use this document. Hope this isn't too much information. Oh, of course it is, Becky. It's a lot of information. Sorry, take a deep breath, everybody. We're going to make it. Just keep telling yourself, nobody's saying you have to do this tomorrow, and the Padlet will be there forever. You can go look at it later.
Which document are you
The one, sorry, I can't click back or I'll lose this one. It's the one that says critical concept alignment. Because I didn't download it here, I have to scroll through it, sorry. Hold on, okay. So if I'm looking at a certain proficiency scale for 4th grade, you can see here, these are the titles of our NAD proficiency scales. Energy, motion, light and vision, waves, information transfer, geographic features. You'll see those scales on the toolbox. If I want to know what NGSS standard that came from, I look at energy and I can see that they pulled it from NGSS 4PS32 and NGSS 4PS34. I can actually Google those two things and say, provide unit plan for NGSS 2 PS4, NGSS 2nd grade, and get some ideas. Now, that doesn't mean I just teach that unit and then say, yeah, it's standards based. I have to still go through that unit and say, okay, this applies to this 2.0, this applies to this 2.0. But it helps you to have a starting point. Sometimes the standards, you're like, what is that asking us to do? And sometimes pulling an NGSS unit or information can help you make a little more sense of that. So that's why that document's there. It has the correlation for ELA. It'll show you what was the original source document for the proficiency scale being built. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, that's right there. Then I've given you some generic, I would say generic, random is probably a better word for it. Some random elementary unit sample plans that are sourced from other places. They're not NAD ones. So they have a different format. I wanted to show those to say, it's okay if you start out doing different or you end up with it looking different. And Shanina's going to share one of hers today, and you'll see how hers look different because it's morphed into what works for her. So that gives you some samples of some math and ELA units. I've given you this sample from my 7th grade teacher because I love what she does. This was the lady that did the circle unit. And I'll show you a few things that she adapted that I like. When she does her scale, so this is the proficiency scale that she's built into her unit plan. When she does the 2.0s, notice how she labels them. A, B, and C. They're not labeled on your NAD proficiency scale, so when you talk to students, sometimes it's hard to know, or to track. So because she's labeled them, this is C1A, C1B, C1C, she can kind of refer to them as that to track them, which I appreciate that. She's got her vocabulary listed there. She actually has everything linked right here in Google, so she can click on her pre-assessment, her ICANN statements for her students, and then her lesson plans are listed there. And then these are, see those codes there? She's working on the 2nd standard, C2, the 2.0s, B and C. So she kind of set up her own code so she kind of knows how to roll with it. Then this is her student summary, how she tracks, or her students track their information. Kind of like that one I showed you in the other PowerPoint. The student's name there, they put the date they complete the assignment. All the assignments are aligned to the proficiency scale, and the students know that. And then they record how much time they spent on it. That just helps her to know how they're coming along, and vocabulary there. And then this is the student-friendly version. I like this part that she does here too. Whoops, sorry. Her husband's also a teacher, and he didn't like this category. She calls it the I can't yet category. So it's like, I can't do it yet, but I'm working on it. So if she's working with a group of kids and somebody needs to work on C1A, she's got it linked to IXL. So they can just click there and practice that topic while she's working with someone else. And then she's got, these are practice things they need to practice in order to get there. So just some resources teachers have created, and I've given you a copy of her pre-assessment. A note about pre-assessments. When I first started this work, everybody talked about pre-assessments, and I thought, we all need a pre-assessment. And a pre-assessment's a great idea, but it's not worth your time if you're not going to use it. And so don't do it if you don't have time to allow that pre-assessment to change your teaching. So that's just a Shanina, what would you say about pre-assessments do you find them useful?
After a few years we spend time with the same kids, sometimes I skip that because I know that we went through the water, the 3 types of water
Yeah.
forms. So I said, yes, we'll skip these, and I will even skip some 2.0s because I know where my students.
Right.
I do have not a pre-assessment, like an assessment that allows me to keep going, but yes, I skip sometimes the pre-assessment.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know my students.
In some subject areas, you may find it more beneficial than others. Like math may be an area that you're like, okay, we need to do a math pre-assessment because I want to make sure, that I'm not wasting my time. Or the other thing is, do I need to backtrack and do some foundational skills or some basic skills that they've missed in order to get to the unit? These elementary science, I'll try to add some more here for you because I see I only put 5 through 8. These are multi-grade units based on the scales. And it should have, if you click on this, it should have everything you need to teach the unit. So there's the 3 and 2.0s, the evidence of learning, common errors, resources, and then the teachers have put the day 1 by design textbook supports there, and then anything that they created. Here's their pre-assessment with the answer key, and then all of their teacher created resources are shared here at the end for you. I had a brand new to teaching teacher. She was coming out of a different field. She was a young gal. And she said she was at one of my multi-grade trainings and taught this unit after she got back. And she called me and she said, do you have any more of those? She said, I've been trying to teach by design and my kids are bored and I'm bored. That's no criticism to by design. And she said, if I could just have more of these units for this year. And because she'd never taught before, so it helped her to have a unit that she could actually follow that had engaging activities already built into it. So those are there for you. And then just some assessment pieces, graphic organizers that Shanina shared with me a long time ago. Thank you, Shanina. I think those are your graphic organizers. Student tracking ideas are listed here. Just a few examples of how you can use scales in the classroom with students. And you can ignore these high school scales and music scales. Some of those others are just things that we use in other trainings. You can just ignore them. I wanted to click on this kindergarten. I think this may have a copy of a student tracking for lower grades. Oh, no, it doesn't. I'll try to pull up that and show it to you later. Okay, let's go back to this pre-assessment document. You don't have to technically fill out this document, but the format of it helps me to think through the process. So when you first start planning a unit, you want to first start thinking, I always start thinking at the 2.0 level. So I start thinking, what's my 2.0 content? The very first thing I'm going to do is discuss with my teacher, colleague, friends, how am I going to assess this? What is it even asking kids to do? How could we assess if kids know that or not? How will I teach it? So what does the instruction look like? And then what resources will I need? So you can use this with a group of teachers to kind of fill in and type that out. Or I'm going to show you the way that we kind of do it in my union that's just kind of a little bit easier. So let's dig in here. What I've done here is I've taken, let me see what time it is.
Yeah, it's 11:35.
Okay, we'll go through this and then we'll give you more planning time when we get down to social studies because I'm going to kind of cover some social studies here, but I think it's important to walk through a little bit of a unit plan. I pulled the content off of the second grade social studies types of justice scale, and it's a PDF on there, but I just cut and pasted it into a Word document, and now I'm going to actually use that scale to do some of my planning. And I'm going to have to type, so I'm going to put this guy in here. Okay, maybe not. Goodness, you'd think I'd never used technology before. I'm going to come up here because I can't move that thing down. Okay, so if you'll go to the toolbox, if you're able to access that, you can also see it here, and pull up second grade social studies, the types of justice scale. toolbox, P-scale, second grade, social studies, types of justice. I figured we might be able to do second grade, maybe. And it's down at the bottom, types of justice. Okay, what I want you to do first at your table with your table partners is just read through the scale. So read through what is it asking, read your big idea, your essential question. And I always start at the 3.0. You can do it however works for you. I read the target first, the 3.0, and then I go down and read my 2.0s and my 4.0s, just because I want to know what is it they're really supposed to come away knowing, and then let's see how we're going to get there, and then what are we going to do to go above and achieve that higher. So does everybody have access to that, or to your table partner has access to it? Would it be helpful if I just stick it on the Padlet? Okay. I'm just going to put it under unit planning resources. And I'm going to move it up to the top for you. Okay, if you refresh your Padlet, you should be able to find it there. And I want you to take this isn't as much time as you probably need, about 5 minutes and read through it, just kind of talking about what the scale is asking students to do. And then we're going to go line by line through a couple of 2.0s and how we would assess it and how would we teach it and what activities might we do. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is going to be one of those crazy examples of, yeah, maybe that's not going to work out, but that's okay. All right, so let's all, in your table group, we will spend a few minutes just talking through this proficiency scale. Okay, what are your thoughts as you read types of justice?
Second grade does not understand justice.
That's why we're going to teach them. Right. That's why we're going to teach them. Yep.
Life's
Yeah.
not fair. Or that's their justice.
Okay. It's a lot, isn't it? Yeah, it's a lot. Okay, other thoughts? Other thoughts?
Of how to teach it.
Or just any ideas that came to mind as you read through the proficiency scale? Yes, Jody.
One thing that was helpful for me is to look at the teacher one
And the student.
one and compare them, because the teacher one had some examples, but the student one was written in simple language.
Simple language,
So
yep.
it's nice to have
Yep.
both.
It is nice to have both. And you know where to find the student one on the toolbox. Click on I Can samples. Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think it's good to share ideas, because for me, I don't know, I'm a bit sleepy, and for me, her idea.
Uh-huh.
No, they will not be able. But when she came up with what to do,
Yeah,
to catch
yeah.
students' attention, like distributing candies unfairly among the students,
Yeah.
among groups. So it was, this is not fair. Why they have more, we have
Right.
less? So they make them think about what justice means, what's right and wrong. So we know that, okay, this is not so hard as it seems to be.
Right,
We just
right.
need to make it clear for them.
Yeah. And that's the power of collaborating with other teachers and getting those ideas. That's, power of that. Yes?
I'm also thinking that role play could work as an assessment for 3.0.
Oh, I like that. And in the 3.0, they're pulling together what they've learned about distributive, corrective, and procedural justice. And the
students guess what is happening.
which one? Yeah, I love it. Any other thoughts? You guys are already generating ideas. Let's pick one. All we're going to have time for is 1 2.0, and we may not even get through that. But I just want to show you how we sometimes in a team will just do this. And we just, for each 2.0, we talk about how would we assess this? I need 2 S's. How would we assess this? How would we teach it? What resources do we need? There we go. So it's hard starting with how you assess. And you may actually kind of go back and forth. You may drift over to teach, which is okay. I'm going to give you permission to do that. And then say, okay, yeah, we could do that. But now what would an assessment look like? So identify examples of situations involving distributive justice, such as how much food different members of a family should receive at dinner time as we distribute things equally. So what are the students supposed to do? What do we want them to be able to do to perform this task? They're going to identify examples. So do they have to come up with them?
No, they have to see examples and know which one represents distributive.
Or talk about scenarios and know which one is distributive, yeah. So look up in the vocabulary. We have distributive and distributive justice as vocabulary words. So we would want to intentionally teach those vocabulary words. So what kind of assessment, would you see this as being assessed through observation or through interview or through like an oral conversation? Or can you envision a written assessment that second graders could do?
Demonstrate? Could they demonstrate, act it out?
Sure, yeah. They could show an example, yeah.
Probably use oral interview.
Oral interview. Could you show, I'm just throwing out ideas, could you show pictures of like 4 scenarios and talk about those 4 scenarios? What's happening in this picture? In this picture, the kids are doing this or the people are doing this. Is that an example of distributive justice? What about over here? But we need to teach them distributive justice first also. But we got to think about that assessment piece. So tell me what you would like for assessment. I'm just going to type it in here. We could have students role play. Oh, different types of, so we could give them the scenarios and then have students role play predetermined, for lack of a better word, scenarios. And then the other students can identify whether or not it is a that's not going to be right. Justice, whether it represents distributive justice. You get my point there. Would that be a good way to assess it? We're just checking. Do they get it? Do they get it? Do they understand what distributive justice is? Yes.
How concerned do you need to be when your assessment is collaborative? Like the class as a whole is determining one that is deep. How concerned are you about, maybe one student isn't
Right.
speaking?
I get that question a lot. You're going to find that there are people who are, I have a friend that we call ourselves the P-scale Pharisees because we're very literal interpreters of the P-scales, and we want to know that each student has done that task. However, I have other friends that are more flexible, and that's fine too. Use your teacher judgment. When I ask Marzano representatives that same question, our people who are guiding us in this process, they said, your teachers are the professional. They're going to know. If you're doing this whole group and you see one kid not participating, you're going to know to pull that kid aside, to ask that kid a question, to give them another opportunity. You do that now. If you're doing the alphabet or whatever, or doing fractions on a board, and okay, hold up your answers. Okay, they've got it. He's never showing his. Okay, let's do another one. He's still not doing his. Okay, they've got it. That one's still not doing theirs. you know to go pull that one aside at recess or one-on-one or when you have a group time. So I think yes and no. There's not a straight answer for that, sorry. You find what works for you. For me, there's flexibility. For me, I want to know that my students know it. However, I think it's more important on the 3.0s to actually have an opportunity that they all respond individually. The 2.0s, you're going to know via a 3.0 if they're not able to do that 3.0 and they didn't contribute, you're going to be like, oh man, I need to back up. They still don't know distributive justice. How would you teach it? And this may not be the perfect assessment opportunity, but you're seeing how we process through verbally. How could we teach it? How could we set up a scenario to teach? You know what I think is a great teaching opportunity for this concept that we already have? Pathways, when the doorbell rang.
Yes.
You know, ding dong, how many do we give? Ding, you know, do you guys know that cookie story? Isn't that a second grade book?
It's great for teaching division.
Yeah. And it represents distributive justice. You could actually tie in bits and pieces of this within a language arts unit and not teach it as a separate social studies unit. You could actually, sorry, my brain starts going everywhere. You could actually find books, one that does distributive justice, then you could teach corrective justice in another book, and you don't have to assess this in a unit. It could be taught through ELA and then assessed individually, and then bring it together as a social studies unit after they've kind of learned the bits and pieces through ELA. Any other ideas for teaching it? That specific 2.0? I'll just throw up here something here and just say, read, is it when the doorbell bang? Blah, 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 you get the point. And so books, what would I need? I may even ask kids to draw a scenario. You know, maybe I want to come, and this is where when I start talking resources, sometimes we'll start talking around the table about what else do we need? Well, it'd really be fun if I had an activity tied to this. You know, how am I going to keep these kids busy? And what about in my multi-grade? I've got fourth graders that I'm teaching this to. Oh, the fourth graders could do this. Okay, well, maybe an assessment could be that the students draw a scenario and show their picture and share what their story tells about distributive justice. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's go change our assessment, you know? So it does kind of get back and forth as we think about all the different components, but we're still coming back to that specific 2.0. What is it that I need to do for that 2.0? How will I know that students know it? And then we just, through discussion in our collaborative team, we move down to the next one. How are we going to do this one? How would we teach it? How would we assess it? Eventually that all gets built into those daily plans. How you feeling? Yeah. We only have 2 minutes, so I'll wrap up there. I would like, Shanina's going to share kind of her unit planning process because I think that everybody does it differently and it looks different, and that's okay. Number one thing, be intentional about assessing and teaching each element of the scale. All right. Woo! Take a breather. Good job, you guys. You survived. And now I think it's time for tricks of the trade people.